everyone? Welcome to the Monday edition of the FanDuel Punch-Out. I'm Big Italy 42, joined by Spencer Limbach at Spencer_JL, and we're going to be talking about tonight's action kicking off at 7:05 tonight on FanDuel, and a little bit of weather concerns, but not a bad slate though, right?
Yeah, it's a nice little 8-game slate. But man, my favorite stack of the day, it looks like there's going to be some weather problems, so we're going to have to monitor that one as the day goes along. But we'll get into that in a little bit here.
Yeah, absolutely. And in one of the places where you don't really expect it either. So a little bit of a surprise. When you had said that to me, I hadn't checked the weather yet, and a little disappointed in that. But we'll get to that here in a minute. We're going to start off with starting pitcher. And my favorite option, we were talking a little bit about it before the show. Seems like he's your favorite option as well. Excuse me. And the safest guy on the board, it seems, Scott Kazmir, $8,800 against Houston. Obviously, you've got a little bit of concern against some of these big Houston righties. They've got some big bats in that lineup. But at the same time, Kazmir's effective. He's a nice strikeout pitcher, 21.1% last year. Generally keeps the ball on the ground, and 285 WOBA allowed to right-handed batters last year. So everything looking like it's in his favor as long as he can keep the ball in the park tonight.
Yeah, and I mean, he's generally a ground ball pitcher. He really doesn't have home run concern to begin with, so he has that working in his favor. And Vegas tends to agree for the most part. I mean, he's a -130 road favorite with a 7.5 over/under, so you can take comfort in that, and I think he's a solid cash game play. The only concern I have is I don't really like taking lefties against Houston because you have Springer, Carter, Altuve, guys who hit lefties pretty well. So, I mean, if Kazmir can work around those guys, and, I mean, 2 or 3 of those guys are boom or bust players anyway. So, I mean, I still like Kazmir tonight. I just probably won't go all in on him just due to that. I mean, Houston could, drum something up here.
Yeah, I mean, those guys strike out a ton, but like you said, they've got a lot of power as well. So someone's got to win this battle, and maybe even if he gives up a couple runs, maybe he racks up some strikeouts like we saw some Indians pitchers do last week. And still a fine matchup, though, but like you said, a little bit of risk there as well. A couple other guys that I generally like in tournaments are in some pretty tough spots. Jake Odorizzi got a nice strikeout rate, 24.2%, but at the Rogers Center against all those big bats tonight, the fact that he's got a 48.7% fly ball, not ground ball, fly ball rate, really struggles with keeping the ball on the ground. I really hesitate to look his way tonight against that power-filled lineup tonight.
Yeah, I'm actually probably going to have several bats against him tonight. I mean, if you look at the run totals of teams playing in the later slate, we have Toronto at 4.57, Angels at the same, and those are the 2 highest scoring projected teams on the night. So, yeah, I'm going to really look at Toronto bats there.
Yeah, completely agree there. And so that kind of takes him out of consideration for me there. You got Michael Pineda, who was tough against righties and lefties last year, and the smaller sample size, but still a potent lineup there tonight. But I don't think he's in a bad spot at 8,100 tonight, though.
Yeah, I like that as a tournament pick. I think he's going to have a low ownership percentage, and he's a guy who can do some damage. This game really isn't projected to be high scoring, so there's not really much of a threat in that category. I mean, obviously at Baltimore, generally a hitter's park. There's always a little bit of risk, but I mean, that's basically what you have to take when you're looking at a GPP play like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me know, is there anybody else you're looking at for cash games? Obviously, John Lester is in play, but you mentioned before the show, wind's kind of blowing out at Wrigley. Reds swinging decent bats. I mean, you got a couple lefties in there. Joey Votto is still going to be fine against Lester, but Jay Bruce pretty much going to be, that old Jay Bruce, 0 for 4, 3 Ks kind of guy. So that takes away one of the big bats. What do you think about Lester?
Why don't they just sit him against lefties, it seems? I mean, work someone in the platoon.
You'd think so. But I mean, not a lot of depth, I guess, in that outfield right now.
Yeah. Lester's too pricey for me, even though he has strikeout upside. If I'm not going Kazmir for cash games, I'm going to look towards Andrew Kashner. He's in a pretty decent spot at home in that pitcher's friendly ballpark. This is a low total, 6.5 total runs projected, and San Diego's favored in this game. So I think that's a safe fallback play if you're going for cash games. And he's a little bit cheaper. He's at 8K, while Kazmir's at 8.8K. So I like him too.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I mean, he's got solid numbers last year, 48.3% ground ball rate. Held righties to just a 256 WOBA. So, I mean, that's anybody who can dominate righties to that type of clip. I mean, he's definitely in play for me tonight and the best pitcher's ballpark in the game.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to move on here to catcher, where there's not a ton of options. You got Brian McCann, nice splits against lefties throughout his career, taking on Chen today. He's at $3,200. If you want some power, we kind of mentioned the wind blowing out in Wrigley. We're going to have Devin Mesoraco at $3,300. Off to a really weak start this year, but we know the kind of power that he showed last year, young bat. So those are two guys I'm going to be targeting most. You've got Yasmani Grandal at $3,000. Not in a bad spot against Paxton either, assuming that he's in the lineup at $3K. Any of those guys in particular that you like, or there's other guys you're looking at also?
I like the Mesoraco call as a tournament play. I'm probably not going to do it for cash games just because you don't really know going up against Leicester. But he's going to have a low ownership percentage. People are going to shy away from him going versus an ace, even though he has the platoon advantage. And like you said, he hasn't been very good lately. So if you click on the game log, I think that'll steer a lot of people away as well. Some other options I'm looking at here. Evan Gaddis, maybe versus Casimir for a tournament play. As we said, those Houston righties have some power upside. Tournament only there. Russell Martin, we said targeting the Jays bats against Odorizzi possibly here. And Martin's hitting in the first half of the lineup. I like his lineup security. I think he's a great play there. Otherwise, Stephen Vogt maybe against Scott Feldman.
Yeah.
He's had a great opening week, and he could keep it going in Hitter's Ballpark in Houston.
Yeah, and the only other guy I want to highlight, and this is going to be dependent on his lineup spot, is Derek Norris. I don't think he's in a bad spot at 2,500. Assuming he's at the top half. I mean, he's batted second this year. He's also batted eighth, I believe, eighth and ninth. So if he's got a nice lineup spot, you like his matchup against Robbie De La Rosa there, who pretty terrible against lefties and righties equally last season.
Yeah, he's got a .365 WOBA against righties and lefties. So, yeah,
he's generous to all parties.
Yeah.
All right, moving on here to first base. Once again, going to touch on some Toronto bats. I like Edwin Encarnacion at $4,700 at home in the Rogers Center against a fly ball pitcher. Kind of a no-brainer play there. You take into account any of those factors, whichever you like, put them all together, and he makes for my favorite expensive option on the day.
Yeah, I like him, but I would rather go with Pujols if there wasn't that weather concern. God, that's so...
Yeah.
That really screws things up because I made some lineups last night with Angel Stack in mind. Pujols, he has a great price tag, too. He's 3.8K. Yeah. Going up against lefty Ross Detweiler, who allows 3.45 WOBA to righties. So, I mean, that was just such an obvious stack in a hitter's-friendly ballpark. Obviously, look at the weather, but keep Pujols on your list if the weather does clear up. Some other guys I'm looking at, Ike Davis of Oakland. I should mention that Stephen Vogt, he's first base eligible on FanDuel. Is that correct?
Stephen Vogt, no, he's catcher.
Is he catcher? Okay. Yeah, someplace he's first base only for some reason. But another first baseman from Oakland, I like Ike.
Yeah.
No pun there. No pun intended. Anyway. But yeah, hitters friendly ballpark, like we said, against Feldman, who's a very average at best pitcher. That's really all I have on my list. Maybe Chris Davis in a tournament against Pineda. He'll have a low ownership percentage, kind of wedged in between those better options. But I mean, I'm kind of hesitant to go there.
Yeah, I mean, on an 8-game slate, there's surprisingly a lack of options if you feel great about it. I mean, there's some big bats in there, but not a lot of them in great spots. Most of them against above average pitching, some solid pitching. So I think those are the guys that I'm on as well here. Moving on to second base here, we've got the most expensive option is going to be one of your favorite options, one of my favorite. Absolutely mashed lefties last year. Not a ton of power, obviously, but Jose Altuve batted .414 against lefties last year. His OPS was 1.013 against lefties. Obviously, against Casimir, if you're playing Casimir, you're not going to want to play Altuve as well. But, I mean, at $4,000, he has a little bit of power. He's got speed upside. He gets on base, scores runs. So you got to like him up top there at 4K.
Yeah, that's the thing I like about him is that he's not going to need Houston to do a whole lot to rack up fantasy points. I mean, he could get 2 or 3 hits himself, maybe a double in there, and steal 1 or 2 bases, and like you're golden.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
so I mean, yeah, he's obviously the top play. If you don't want to spend that much or you don't like the matchup as much, I would probably lean down to Ben Zobrist in the same game, opposite side. Switch hitter, great lineup spot, going against an average pitcher. In a hitter's friendly ballpark, I really like that, and I like the price tag there. Otherwise, looking down, I'm going to butcher his name. So I'm just going to say the second baseman from the Angels, Johnny Giovatella.
I think that's how it's right. I think that's right.
Okay. He's batting in the 9 hole against lefties for the Angels, and you don't like that lineup positioning, but think about it. He has guys like Trout and Pujols batting just a couple spots behind him, so there's great run scoring potential there. That is, if the weather clears up in Texas. I like that pick. Otherwise, another tournament pick I'm looking at is Devin Travis from Toronto. As we said, hitters friendly ballpark. This is a game to target, and I like him mixing in those Jays bats.
Yeah, completely agree there. And if you want another guy who's not in a bad spot, Shelby Miller was pretty terrible last year, kind of a bust so far as a prospect. And D Gordon's a guy that can rack up fantasy points in a hurry. I mean, he gets on, he's going. He's like he and Billy Hamilton, the two guys, they get on base. You know they're going to try to steal second after a single or a walk, what have you. And you just figure out when it's going to be. And so he's the guy with some big upside despite not having any power. So if you want a little contrarian, expensive guy there at 3,800, I don't mind him at all.
Yeah, speaking of Billy Hamilton, did you see that highlight where the Pirates pitched out and Hamilton still easily stole second base?
Yeah, and that's not even the first time that's happened either.
Oh yeah, all right. That's pretty regular for him.
It's
but
absolutely
that's
insane.
just amazing. Yeah.
But Eric Davis last year did say that he's still faster than Billy Hamilton, so I'm waiting on that race. For those of you who are old, maybe not Reds fans, but old baseball fans, that race probably won't ever happen. But there was some talk, and I like some trash talk like that. But I would love to see that. All right, we'll move on here to third base, where I'm not going out of my way to pay a lot of these expensive price tags. I mean, you've got Josh Donaldson, much better against lefties. Adrian Beltre, weather concern, but not in a bad spot against Shoemaker at 3,900. I'm not sure I'm really wanting to pay that price. Todd Frazier, much better against righties, so no thanks there. Seager, better at home, but fine against righties, so I think he's in play. Chase Headley's the guy that I really like here at $2,900. Got some nice splits against lefties. Got some power, hit a home run in the last game. Be getting a nice lineup spot right around fifth in the order most days. So he's probably going to be my preferred play here. And as much as I hate to say it, Alex Rodriguez is in play as well, as long as he's got a nice lineup spot at 3K.
Yeah, I mean, I like both of those picks with the platoon advantage over Chen in a hitter's friendly ballpark. I think those are solid plays. Going from there, I really had my eye on David Freese of the Angels. He usually hits up in the order against lefties, and this is a weak lefty at best. So I wouldn't mind him if it weren't due to the weather concern. But otherwise, looking down the list, there really isn't much. You can maybe look at Brett Lowry, but he hasn't really been that good earlier this season. I'd probably rather go with Headley or Rodriguez, like you mentioned. Adrian Beltre is actually in my system. He's the top overall play, but not really by much. So I'm not sure if it's worth spending up on him on top of those weather concerns.
Yeah, I agree there. It's definitely it's one thing if there's some weather concerns for an hour, 2 hours, but like you mentioned, it's most of the night. So unless that front moves out, I mean, it's going to be a big concern there, unfortunately.
Yeah.
All right, next up, shortstop, where it's really ugly tonight, if you ask me. I mean, you've got Jose Reyes at $3,800 if you want to pay up. I like Asdrubal Cabrera at $2,700. He's been batting second in the lineup. Not a ton of power, but he's the guy that gets on base. He's got 8 hits already this season. So, I mean, probably more of a cash game play, but not a ton of upside. But, I mean, right in that middling price tag where it's not going to hurt you, but he gives you a decent floor. And, I mean, I think he's going to be my main target at a really weak position tonight.
Yeah, I think you really hit the nail on the head there. It's Reyes. I mean, if you want to take comfort in the better player and you have the extra cap room, go with Reyes in a hitters-friendly ballpark in that great Toronto lineup. Otherwise, I don't have a problem going down to Cabrera. And, I mean, that's a great price for him, considering his batting order, considering the park that he's playing in tonight. I'll give you one more, and it's kind of a GPP pick, a punt play, just a little filler. Alexi Amarista of San Diego. Doesn't have a great lineup spot, but he has a nice matchup against Ruby De La Rosa. And, I mean, he's been producing over the past couple games. He went 2 for 3 with a triple RBI and a walk yesterday. I mean, that's just the kind of line he'll give you. And you got Will Myers, Justin Upton, those guys at the top of the order batting behind him. So I really don't mind that pick for the minimum price.
No, not at all. And, I mean, he's got the speed necessary to take advantage of that big ballpark that we saw. He hit a triple in the last game. So you definitely like that. I mean, at minimum salary, too. So you can fill out the rest of your lineup with whoever you want. Like we said, not a lot of expensive pitchers really want to pay up for. So maybe stack the rest of your lineup however you like. Slot him in there, 2,200, and save yourself some cash.
Yep.
All right, moving on to the outfield where, I'll say it one more time, weather concern, but Mike Trout, obviously one of the top plays on the day at $5,000, as he always is. We don't really need to tell you that, though. And outside of him, who else are you looking at to pay up for? Because there's not a lot of these guys that are expensive that I really love the spot. Obviously, like Jose Bautista in that environment, fly ball pitcher at 4,600. But outside of that, I mean, I'm really not going out of my way to pay up in the outfield.
No, it's basically at the top end. It's Trout or bust for me. I hate that weather concern.
It's so bad.
I really wanted an excuse to play Mike Trout too, but it looks like we're going to have
easy to fit him today too.
Yeah. But so otherwise, looking down on my list, I have Alejandro De Aza at 3.1K. I mean, he's been great in this first opening week for Baltimore, hitting leadoff. He has home run upside, definitely run scoring upside in a hitters-friendly ballpark with a decent lineup. Multiple hits in 2 of the last 3 games. In the non-prohibitive price point at 3.1K, I like that. Despite, a pretty middling matchup, but I think the price kind of alleviates that, and you can easily blend them in.
Yeah, completely agree there. And another guy at 3,100, one of my favorites, as usual, assuming that he's batting high in the order like he was last time. $3,100 for Kevin Kiermaier, facing off against R.A. Dickey today. We know how the knuckleball works. It's either working or it's not really in the in-between. And I like Kiermaier as a nice cash game play and a tournament play if he's batting up at the top of that order once again.
Yeah, I like that too. I mean, he's another guy who's really been producing. The park shift to the Rogers Center definitely helps him. Another guy from that game is Pompey. He's sitting at 2.9K for Toronto, and he's a switch hitter, and I really like him. He has power upside in that ballpark, and I think he could do some damage as a nice tournament pick.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, he got off to a nice hot start as well. And another guy you had mentioned before the show that we've been liking quite a bit. He's batted third, he's batted fifth, he's batted seventh. Travis Snyder, if he's got a nice lineup spot tonight at $3,000, he's not a bad play against Pineda. I'm not going out of my way to target a lot of hitters against him, but nice cheap play in Snyder with some power upside.
Yeah, I always fill out multiple tournament lineups, as many people do in baseball, and I think that kind of getting a De Aza Snyder cheap little mini stack in there is a pretty decent tournament strategy. Definitely someone to keep on your radar still for cash games too, as he has a pretty decent on base percentage early in this season. I mean, he's just doing what he needs to do, basically. And let's see, Chris Carter is another tournament only option, because he has been pretty brutal to begin the season. But, I mean, that's per his usual. I mean, he's going to strike out or he's going to hit 3 home runs in a game. So, I mean, that's your classic tournament profile for a guy like that. And he's going up against a lefty today. Granted, it's a pretty decent lefty. But, I mean, he's going to have a low ownership percentage still because let's just say he's sucked lately.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, is there anyone else you're looking at below ish?
I like Seth Smith, assuming he's in the lineup. Righty masher against Brandon McCarthy. I mean, not an ideal matchup. McCarthy keeps the ball on the ground, but 2,900 for one of the better right-handed hitters against righties in the league. And at that price, I like him quite a bit. David DeJesus, if he's in the lineup at 2,500, is swinging a nice bat there. So I like that one as well. I had your boy Pompey on here, so I'll go ahead and skip him. Sam Fold has had a couple nice games. Been batting up at the top of the order. Got a nice matchup there, 2,800. And that's about it for me.
I got one more.
What do you got?
Minimum price, it's speaking to that Alexi Amarista theme. Will Venable kind of holds the same sentiment as Amarista. He's just one of those guys who's not overly impressive. He hits down in the order, but like we said, he could get multiple hits. I mean, he's a very capable hitter in a good matchup at minimum salary. So I really don't mind that pick if you need a filler there.
Yeah, and a nice contrarian stack could be the Padres. You don't like the hitting environment, but you love the matchup for these guys. So maybe a little mini stack there. You can get it for really cheap. Stack some big bats around it. I don't mind that strategy at all. With that, that's going to wrap things up for us here today. Make sure you check out all the great content we have at dailyfantasycafe.com. I'm at Big Italy 42. He's at Spencer_JL. We'll see you guys again tomorrow.